Pain. Okay.
Pain. Mm-hmm.
Sumita said pain. Cramps.
This doesn't just have to be for menstruators. Everyone can have thoughts about it. So anyone is welcome to share. Growth.
Nice. Okay. So you can keep putting those in there and we'll start. So I'm going to just share my screen so I can show you the anatomy. Is there anyone here who is not familiar with the science of menstruation? So how it happens, if you've not studied it at all, you can please let me know in the chat and then I will make sure to go over that as well.
Okay, so I am, on being honest, I'm completely clueless. Like all I know, it's a biological process, and the during the periods, the body throws out the waste blood or the impure, some sort of impure stuff.
Right.
Something
Okay.
like that. I have like a brief idea.
Right. Okay. So let's go over it. This is a uterus, as many of you might have studied before. You are usually taught menstruation in 8th grade, but it's very common that teachers skip the chapters or just don't explain it properly. So I'm going to briefly go over it. I'm not going to get into all the hormones and the details of how menstruation happens, but let's go through it briefly. So these are the ovaries on both sides, the light blue ones. This is where the egg is produced. So every month in a menstruator's body, an egg is produced. It's either produced from this ovary or this ovary. When it's released, it travels down the fallopian tube. This is the fallopian tube. And around here in the fallopian tube, if there's a sperm present, the egg would be fertilized. So after the egg is fertilized, it continues moving down and it embeds itself in the uterus wall. So this is called the endometrium, and it's made mainly from blood and mucus. Okay, it also has many other minerals, vitamins, everything that would be needed for basically a baby to grow, right? I just want to check, can you all hear me? My laptop is freezing a little.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
Right, okay. So this is where the egg would implant and it's where the baby would grow. Now, if the egg doesn't get fertilized, what happens is that the egg travels down and it still embeds itself in endometrium, in that it comes to the side. But since it's not fertilized, our body gets rid of the lining, the endometrium, as well as the egg. Okay, and period blood is basically this lining and the egg that is being shed, and this gets shed every month. So here you have the question that we're so often taught that menstrual blood is impure, it's dirty, and like, for example, even you just said, right, it's unclean blood. And I just want you to question and just think about this. This blood would have been like a pillow or a casing for a newborn baby. It's what would have provided all the nutrients for a baby to grow, for it to thrive. And how can that blood ever be impure? Just think about that for a second. It's some of the cleanest blood, the purest blood in the entire body. It has so many nutrients from the mother's body. So that is a small thing to think about. This blood, as you can see in the diagram, it leaves the cervix. This is the cervical opening. This is a one-way canal, and that's really important because we'll come back to this when we talk about menstrual cups. So the cervix is a one-way canal. It feels a lot like the tip of your nose. And after that, you have the vaginal tract. So we're often mistaken that the entire reproductive system is called the vagina. That's not at all true. The vagina is just the opening and the canal at the very start. So we have the most nerve endings in the cervix and the vagina. And that is, again, important when we come back to the menstrual cup. So we are going to, do you have any questions about this before I move to the external anatomy?
No, not really.
One quick thing. Yeah, sorry. Continue, please. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify one thing. When she said that every month one egg is produced, it means that it's released from the ovaries. So essentially, when a menstruator is in its fetus form, so in its mother's body, it has approximately 6 million eggs in its body, and throughout a menstruator's lifetime, no new eggs are produced. So essentially, when a menstruator is born, they still have around 1 to 2 million eggs in their body already. So every month, till we hit puberty, you lose around 11 12 to 20,000 eggs, and every month only one egg is released from the ovaries, which comes into the actual uterus. So essentially, the number of years you'll have your period depends on how many eggs get released from your ovaries, and when that number ends, then that's the time when you hit menopause.
Yeah. Okay. I can't see the chat box, so if anyone does have a question, you can please turn your mic on and ask. So now we're going to come to the anatomy. And sorry, was there a question?
I don't think that.
No, sorry, I think that was me.
Okay. Okay. So the external anatomy. Now, this is one part that we definitely don't talk much about especially in school. And I don't know how many of you have actually studied this before. So you can see the anatomy here. This is the clitoris, and this is where we have a lot of nerve endings. It's a very sensitive organ. It's mainly a pleasure organ. Then you have different folds around. So you have the labia minora, the labia majora, and they are extremely porous. They absorb everything that is around in the area. A very thin skin and many folds there. Here you have your urethral opening. This is where, if you have to pee, that is where this is. And this is the vaginal opening. So now you can see the urethral opening and the vaginal opening are different. And again, this is important when we talk about the menstrual cup or tampons, because we often get a question of whether can you go to the washroom if you have the cup inside or if you're wearing a tampon. And yes, you absolutely can, because you can see here there are two different openings. Like I said before, the vaginal opening has a lot of nerve endings, and so it's quite sensitive. So this is a brief about the anatomy. If you have any questions about this part, you can put it in the chat. And if not, I'm going to move on, and you can keep asking and we'll keep answering your questions. So,
Maybe we could do something like we go on with the presentation, and maybe towards the end we have like a sort of a Q&A, So
sure, we can do that as well. We can do that as well. Okay, sure. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what products we currently use. So how many of you use sanitary napkins right now, sanitary napkins or tampons? You can just put it in the chat. Okay, so I think it's very rare though that we actually think about looking at what is inside our bag. I know when I go and buy food, I do check the ingredients in my food, but I rarely ever, when I used to use pads, I don't think I've ever looked at the ingredients in a pad.
I think there is some problem at her place. Is she just frozen for me or for
no, she's
you
frozen.
also?
I think would be an internet issue.
I think
Can you continue?
Anjali, you're frozen. Just screen wise, you can maybe turn your video off and talk.
So maybe,
Okay, so I think she's
yeah.
having some internet problem, so I can continue with this section. So basically, this is what happens is that oftentimes we're not, since we think that pads are the only option that we have in terms of what we use during our menstruation. So we never really question what's in a pad or how it's made or what the side effects of these materials can be. So basically, I'm going to quickly show you. So we opened up an entire pad just to see what is inside. um, we don't have the presentation on, but I can show you because I have an actual pad here. So as we know, it comes in an individual packaging like this. So every pad has its own packaging. It changes color depending on which company you're buying it from. So that is made from siliconized paper. So that is something that is not degradable. It's a type of plastic. Then we have, if we open up the pad, then we have these two layers. So if you can see, this is the top layer. It's a mesh. It's a woven fiber. And this is the bottom layer that actually sticks to the underwear, and it's non-permeable. So the top part allows blood to go inside, and the bottom part makes sure that there are no leaks in it. And then we have the inner two layers, which are the most important ones, which do all the soaking and absorbing. So just by looking at it, what do you think it's made out of? So you can put it in the chat box and I can keep talking about it. So these top two layers, so anyone who has used a pad, they are familiar with this very distinct sound that it can make. It sounds like plastic kind of crush or like moving against each other. So this top part is made of polypropylene and the bottom part is made of polyethylene, which are two types of plastics essentially, and they cannot degrade. And the inner two parts, if I don't know if you can see, but they look sort of like tissue paper or wipes or something of that sort. So these are made from fibers called rayon and viscose, which are essentially processed wood pulp, but they are processed to a degree where they look like this. Now you have seen maybe tree trunks or barks, but that's not what this is looking like. So why do you think it looks so white? Anyone can, I mean, yeah, whatever is bleach. Yeah, so that is exactly what it is. So pads are generally bleached completely white with the same kind of bleach that we use to clean our washrooms, our tiles, basins, anything that we use to dye or essentially take out color from any fibers. So that is what is present in your pad as well. Now, if you see, if you have seen any advertisements, you might have noticed that they use the word super absorbent polymer. So that is also something that is present in these pads. Since they're very thin, technically their capacity to hold liquid would be much lesser. So these polymers, so again plastic, is added to it, so it increases the absorbency for up to 30%. So your pad can hold a lot more blood. So that is what is in it. And one more ingredient that we might have noticed is perfume. So it has added scents. So anyone who has used a pad, we know that it has a very distinct scent. It's because there are added chemicals in it, so it has that particular scent. Because in India, the standard for checking pads are very low, and the only thing we do check for is comfort, look, scent, and yeah, basically very superficial things. So that is what is in your pad. We didn't know about this until we started doing these things, and we think it's very important for anyone who is using any product that they should have all the information around it, what it can do to you, what it can do to your body. So yeah, so we'll move on to that part. So what do all these materials actually do to our body? So Anjali, do you want to take that?
Sure. And just before moving there, I also want to quickly talk about tampons. I know tampons have become very popular recently, and I'm sure you've seen tampon ads on the TV now. So this is what a tampon looks like. If you haven't seen it before, you can see it has a string, right? This part is basically everything that Sayuri told you that goes inside a pad, that is basically wrapped up and put inside this little part that goes inside your vagina. Okay, it sits just below your cervix and it collects, it basically absorbs all the blood. Okay, so this has rayon, sometimes cotton depending on the brand, and it's wrapped in polypropylene and polyethylene string. So it has a lot of plastic and many pesticides and chemicals. This also contains bleach, which is also there in pads, and it also has fragrances. Now, like we spoke about before, that entire area is extremely permeable. And at least in a sanitary napkin, all of these chemicals were outside. When you use a tampon, you're actually putting all of those chemicals inside your vagina. And this tampon does two things. One, it changes the pH level of the vagina because of the chemicals that are inside. And two, it actually absorbs all the all the mucus, blood, everything that's there in your vagina. So it doesn't just absorb the blood, but it also absorbs the good bacteria and the mucus, which is keeping your vagina healthy. And both of these in combination, they can lead to the growth of a bacteria, which causes a disease called toxic shock syndrome. Might have heard of this before. It is directly linked to tampons, and while it's not that common, it can be fatal. You also have, of course, all of these chemicals being leached right into your bloodstream because it's so close to the skin and it's inside your vagina. So that is about. I would really urge you to be very careful if you're planning to move to tampons as a step from pads to cups, or even just thinking about using tampons because you play sports or because you think it's more comfortable. I urge you to think twice about it. But as I was saying, we'll explore the effects of. Did you mention dioxin, Sayuri? Sorry, I got kicked off because of the Wi-Fi connection in Pune. It's so bad because of the cyclone right now. I can't hear you.
Sorry, you can continue with dioxins. I haven't spoken.
Okay. So dioxin is a chemical which is released from bleach and rayon, and it is actually listed as one of the 12 dirtiest chemicals on this planet by the World Health Organization. It's an organic pollutant, which essentially means that it shouldn't be in contact with anything that's living, so us or plants or anything. And it's shocking because it's in our product. So what does this chemical actually do? When this chemical is released, it firstly gets absorbed directly into our bloodstream because, like I said, that area has very little filtration and it's extremely permeable. Once it enters our bloodstream, it goes and it gets stored in our fat for up to 20 years. Just 20 years, it just sits there and rots. Our body doesn't know what to do with dioxin because it's a foreign chemical. And because of that, so also I think the meeting is about to end. Just check that out.
Yeah, so if this gets disconnected while we're talking, a request to everyone, just click on the same link or enter the same ID password, you all will come back over here.
Okay, great. So when the dioxin is in our in our fat cells, it sits there and can be there for up to 20 years. And dioxin has with issues of fertility, cancers, for example, endometriosis cancer. It's also been due to high blood pressure, pelvic inflammatory disease. Quite a few. So these are not directly linked, of course. There haven't been enough studies around this area, and it's actually quite unfortunate that that's the case. There should be a lot more study being done in this area, but these are the general links that dioxin has to health issues. And you might question, why is it allowed to be given to us if it has these chemicals coming out from it? The thing is that every pad releases a very small amount of dioxin, right? And this amount is so small that it's the Food and Drug Administration, which is the body that looks at any medical product or food product that is coming out into the market. But what is not considered is that menstruators use nearly 10,000 pads and 13,000 tampons in their lifetime. And if every single pad releases a little bit of dioxin, over the years we end up, all of the dioxin ends up getting accumulated in our body. And that is extremely harmful for us. So I just want you to think about this for a second. It's honestly surprising, you know, we use bleach to clean our floors and our toilets, and we don't even know that it's in a product which we use nearly 10 to 15 of every month for 30 to 40 years, right? Why aren't the ingredients listed? Why isn't this common knowledge? It took us so much effort to find out this information, and we had to do at least 5 to 6 months of research. Back then it was especially unknown. but we definitely want you to know what you're using. So, Sairi, do you want to talk about the environmental effects of this? You're on mute.
Okay, sorry. So we talked about what it does to our body, but I think as consumers of any product, we should also take some sort of a responsibility with what happens or what our products do to the environment. So the second biggest part that or problem that is surrounding pads and tampons is the environmental effect of it. So the first thing is, obviously, as we talked about, both of these products contain a lot of materials which are not degradable, which means this is becoming waste that will never go away. So how long do you think it takes for one pad to degrade or to break down? So it's important to think about, because like Anjali said before, one menstruator uses approximately 10 to 15,000 pads in their lifetime, which means that it's, if one person is creating that much waste, and it is not waste, it is not a one time use product, we will keep using it, so it is cumulative waste. So how long do you think it takes for one pad to degrade? You can put it in the chat box. Yeah, so someone said 500 to 800 years, so that is exactly right. So it takes minimum of 800 years for the general pads that we are using right now. So what this does is that it's not just that it has un- non-biodegradable materials in it, but it's also that it has our bodily fluids in it. So this is all right for us, so our menstrual blood is all right for us to be come in contact with, but it's not for good for other people to come in contact with. So in terms of garbage, this should be segregated as a third type of waste, which is called sanitary or medical waste. So what should be done with it is that it needs to be incinerated, which is not ideal either, but it's the best option we have right now. So incineration requires something to be burnt at a very high temperature and at a very high um, sorry, I completely blanked out. High compression and high heat. So that's what basically incineration means, but that does also release chemicals into the air. So it's not ideal, but that is the best option I guess we have right now. So what happens is, since there are so many types of medical waste, so this encompasses everything that is produced in hospitals. This includes diapers, adult diapers, sanitary napkins, bandages, everything. So there are so many hospitals and clinics in every city, and there are not so many incinerators available. So what happens is, many times medical waste gets priority over sanitary waste, so, or household sanitary waste, and it never actually reaches incinerators, and instead it is dumped in landfills. Now, since it is not degradable, every year in just India, we have 432 million pads disposed of just in 1 year. And like I said, this is going to keep happening every year, and every year the number of pads is going to increase, because right now only less than 20% of the menstruators of India use sanitary napkins. The rest of them still use either cloth, they use ashes, they use leaves, sawdust, basically anything that they can find, or some of them free bleed, meaning that they use nothing to stop their flow. So this waste, in terms of weight, it is more than 9,000 tons of waste produced every year, which is more than 27 hectares of landfill that is just filled with sanitary waste. So this is the kind of reality that we're living in, and I think we should take some sort of responsibility to make sure that this, we can do something about it, because it's not going to go anywhere. And what happens is, in landfills, all these chemicals get seeped into the ground, and it pollutes groundwaters, it makes soils infertile, it makes the air impure. So it causes a lot of problems to the ecosystems around the landfills. So in terms of environment, this is a big issue, and many organizations and even government bodies are going around telling telling menstruators to shift from whatever they're using to sanitary napkins without giving them adequate information about what these products actually have and what they're doing to our body, what they're doing to the environment. So we will talk about cloth pads and um, why people keep saying that women should move away from it. So we will talk about that in the next section. So this is about the environmental effects. Anjali, do you want to talk about what happens to the workers?
Sure. Just to quickly add on to this, the waste doesn't magically move from our trash can into a landfill. And I think many of us dispose of our sanitary napkins and we forget about it there. But someone actually has to collect that garbage with bare hands because they don't always have gloves and move that to the landfill. And if you think about it, you wouldn't touch anyone else's sanitary napkin, use sanitary napkin. So why should someone else have to? And many people don't wrap up their sanitary napkin properly. This causes a lot of issues and a lot of diseases amongst the workers who collect this trash as well. Eye diseases, skin diseases, just to name a few. And it's genuinely appalling that as consumers, we have so many other options. I think it's our responsibility to take a look at how our choices as a consumer affect not just us, but the people and the environment around us as well. So I think that being said, we'll move on to the sustainable alternatives which are available in the market, and we'll tell you a little bit about how to use them and what they're made of. So over to you, Saidi.
There's only less than a minute left, so should I start or should we end this meeting?
Okay, I think we can take a few questions in that case just before the meeting.
I think we could do
Okay, yeah. So
questions up till now, we could take those.
we haven't had anything till now. So if any of you have questions, you can leave them there, and if we have time, we can get to them now or at the end of the session.
I think I can just add in one more point while we have a little bit of time left, is that every sanitary napkin costs nearly 7 to 10 rupees. So you can imagine that, especially in this time of COVID, what a big financial burden it is on people who need to buy these sanitary napkins.